All right. It's your man, Byron A. Lloyd. He is out him. I'm back again with my good friend, and like I said, my astute capital punishment expert, Maggie Webster. How's it going, Maggie?
Going pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. You know, same old, man. But we stopped yesterday, and we're going to come back today, and it was kind of weird. We got off because, like I said, let me reiterate. Maggie, I forget what the specific name of the type of investigator you are. You say mitigation?
Mitigation.
Mitigation investigator. And hopefully people, you're smart enough that if you're listening to me, hopefully you're smart enough to know what mitigation or to mitigate means, you know what I mean? To make better, to work it out, in layman's terms, to work it out. But she goes to capital punishment cases after they're in the penalty phase, and you know what I mean? She tries to find what she does find. What am I saying? Finds the humanity in people and proves that everybody deserves a second chance. You shouldn't be killing people like animals, slaughtering like animals. State-sponsored murder is still murder, and you know what I mean. She tries to help them out. Well, what would you say, Maggie? You know better than I. What would you?
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do once the jury has decided that someone has committed a crime, we're not trying to say that the person shouldn't be locked up for what he did. We're not saying he shouldn't be punished for what he did. But we're trying to find the right level of punishment for what he did and who he is.
Right.
And I use he because there are a few women on death row. I have not worked with any personally. The state seeks death against women a lot less than they do against men.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that's just my experience. But so we're just trying to show the jury that this is a whole person, that there's usually extenuating circumstances, and none of that is to say that we don't have great empathy for the victim's family, because we don't get involved in the case unless something terrible has happened.
Right.
From my point of view, I'm trying to prevent any more tragedies from what's already happened.
Right, because violence always begets violence. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, violence begets violence, and because of the nature of the laws, I hear a lot of people complain that death penalty cases take too long, but they should take a long time. They should take a really long time, because they can't get it right. At the end of the day, they just can't. But if we're going to pretend like the state even has a chance of getting it right, then we have to go through these things to make sure that the state is not executing people, willy-nilly. And so it should take a long time, and it should be, really in-depth, and we should really look at these things to make sure that we're, because you can't take it back.
Right, it's a human life. Right.
When somebody has been locked up for 20 years and we figure out that he's innocent and we let him go, that's awful. That's horrible, because we've taken that time.
Because you can't put a money amount on it. Right.
You can't take it back.
Right, and they always try to attach some type of monetary amount when he sues or settles, and it's never what he should get. And you know what I mean. And $100 million won't cover 20 years. You know what I mean? It's your life. You can't get it back, like you said.
But, no, a good friend of mine was on death row in Ohio, and his mother passed away while he was on the row for a crime he did not commit. He's out now, but he'll never get that time back with his mother.
No, man, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, he didn't get to say goodbye to her, and it's awful.
That is awful.
An awful thing.
Right. When we got out there yesterday, we told because you can't talk for a good reason and for legal reasons. You can't talk about cases you work on. I understand that, but I mentioned that I went to school with a couple of murderers, and you had mentioned you went to elementary school with a guy. Was that the same guy in Ohio?
No, this was a different guy. The guy that I went to elementary school with here in Louisiana, we sat near each other in first grade, and went to school together from first grade through fifth grade. And I'm not going to pretend like we were close friends or anything. I knew him. It was a small school, small town.
Right.
He was always a sweet kid, and what we knew as kids of his home life at the time was that his dad beat on his mom.
Oh, wow.
And it was him and his younger brother. And when his mom left, she gave custody to the father.
Wow. Why would she do that? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Wow.
Well, one of my great mentors taught me a long time ago, everybody has mitigation.
Right.
Every single person. So,
has mitigating circumstances, right.
Try to second guess what she did.
I know, I'm just shocked by it. Right.
That she's got to live with. And, for whatever reason, that's the decision she made.
Right.
And so those kids stayed there. So anyway, several years ago now, and it was actually after I had already started kind of getting into this work, I saw online on Facebook where some kids that I went to school with were posting about that Jamie was, that he had been convicted and that he was getting the death penalty. So I started looking up the case because I had moved away from the area by that time.
Right.
And he was estranged from his wife, and they had 3 young kids together, and he was very jealous. They had a long history of an abusive relationship.
Right.
It's what he grew up watching, and it's what he
it's just cyclical, you know what I mean? Just a cycle repeating itself. That's crazy. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So he shot and killed his estranged wife and their son.
Oh, man.
It was horrific.
That is horrific.
He shot at his young daughters, and they played dead, and that's how they survived.
Oh, my God.
Just this horrific thing.
That is horrific.
And nobody's saying it wasn't horrific. Nobody's saying that, anybody deserved to die or any of those things. But at the same time, I remember this sweet, quiet kid that sat next to me in elementary school. So
somewhere down the road,
he got the death penalty, and here in the last month, his younger brother, who's younger than us by 2 years, he had a history of domestic violence with his ex-wife.
Wow, that's crazy.
He has been arrested for the second-degree murder of his ex-wife and her boyfriend.
Oh, my God.
So now this family, this mother,
holy cow,
is looking at potentially 2 sons on death row here in Louisiana.
For basically the same.
And that's not the only violence in the family. Their grandmother went to jail for killing her brother-in-law.
Wow! Holy cow, you weren't joking. Wow! That's nuts. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I don't mean to say nuts. I'm just saying that is off the wall. You know what I mean? I know you're not supposed to say nuts or crazy, but wow. Wow.
For a homicide, and their mother witnessed her sister shot and killed by her estranged husband.
What?
So it's just this horrific violence.
Wow, it's like a family of death. Hold up. Wow, man, you got. Well, see, you didn't primer this at all. We didn't talk about it at all when we got off the phone yesterday. You just acted like it was a pretty good story, but I didn't understand the magnitude. I'm telling you, this is mind blowing. I'm telling you, this is really mind blowing. Just the fact that they're both guilty of the same thing their daddy basically was, except they took it to the extreme. But the fact that their grandma saw her murder too. So it makes you wonder if they're can you be genetically predispositioned to commit violence or murder, I wonder? I'm sure somebody studied it, right?
There was a case out of Tennessee, and obviously I didn't work on it, but the defense brought in witnesses and experts to talk about this, quote, violence gene.
Right.
It was a really interesting article, I want to say, in Popular Science maybe here recently about it.
Right, I have to look it up.
And what they found was that there is a mutation on a gene, and mothers can carry it, but it only really manifests itself in the males in the family, and you can kind of trace the violent gene. I don't know if that's what was going on here. I grew up in a really small town that was very poverty-stricken.
Sounds like my hometown.
That it had to be a combination of the nature and the nurture. There was just not a lot of money in the town. The education was not very good.
Well, it sounds like we were from the same town. That's just the South. You know what I mean? Oh, man.
Well, and the crazy thing is, not that New Orleans has, great education system necessarily in and of itself, but I only grew up 60 miles north of New Orleans, not even that.
Right.
Probably half that, probably about 30 miles north of New Orleans.
See, so basically the suburbs. So, see, the little town I'm from, Forest City, which sadly is named after Nathan Bedford Forrest, and they still haven't changed the name. It's amazing. All the roads are named after Confederate. It's sad. But anyway, it sounds like the same town you're from, and we're like 45 miles from Memphis. You know what I mean? Basically the suburbs. Mm-hmm. So our upbringings are quite similar then, man. Maybe that's why I went to school with murderers, but you got me beat. The two guys I went to school with, I hate to say it's not like a contest on who's got the most gruesome murder story, but because it's horrible. But at the same time, that is mind blowing. The guy I went to school with, man, like I told you, he was high on crack cocaine. I used to work with this girl's sister. He stabbed this girl 52 times, and then sexually assaulted her dead body, and then ran naked through the projects. And the cops caught him. And like I said, when I saw him, he was screaming the crack monster did it. And the judge cleared the court. And then he tried to be my buddy outside the court. And I tried to explain to him, man, we can't be buddies because you stabbed a girl 52 times and I had sex with her after she was dead. They're going to kill you. And this dude was so out of it, gone crazy. He was talking about like we were back in school. And I'm trying to explain to him. And he had no idea. He was so crazy. He had no idea what he was looking at. You know what I mean? And they still give him the death penalty. He's on death row right now. But he was so completely gone that he was talking about old times, man. Not like they're about to drop the death. He was in the penalty phase. He was waiting to get sentenced. And he's out there because they cleared the court because everybody busted out laughing when he said something about the crack monster. That they cleared the court, brought him out, and he's sitting down there talking about old times, like school, like nothing's going on, like he's not fixing to go in there and get the death penalty. And it was obviously he was completely out of his mind. You know what I mean? But that didn't stop them from giving the death penalty. Now, the other guy I went to school with, he straight executed people in a drug deal gone wrong. And he executed them. So, he had the intention and, he premeditated that and had intent and knew what he was doing and had malice and all that. But the other guy, literally crazy as a shithouse rat, and they give him the death penalty anyway. You know what I mean? That dude probably thinks he's in Disneyland right now. I think he's at Tuck Cummins. Instead of being in penitentiary, he probably thinks he's in Disneyland. That's how crazy this dude is. But it's sad they do that. You know what I mean? Louisiana, people don't realize there's a bunch of mental illness that instead of getting treatment, they get sentenced to long sentences in jail and just get cast away, thrown away. And that's another thing I got a big problem with. Because if we had better mental health infrastructure and facilities in this country, a lot of this could be prevented. You know what I mean? And
absolutely. Right. And I've heard story after story of people who were in and out of mental hospitals and then commit a crime, and all of a sudden they're starting to get the attention that they really should have been getting a long time ago.
Right.
Stories of people seeking help and they can't get it.
Right.
And I've dealt with people who have had some significant mental illness, and
I bet.
You hear them talk, and they're not keyed into reality. They are not on the same plane.
No, what? Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, to me, it's so sad because being locked in that brain, that's a punishment
in itself, right?
In and of itself.
Can you imagine? Yeah, it's a prison like no other.
That they should go home,
right?
Because they teach you in law school that the purpose of punishment is there's 4 purposes of punishment. That we want to protect society as a whole, so we want to incarcerate, pull them away from society so other people don't get hurt. We want to deter other criminals, and we want to deter this person. So if it's a case where maybe he'll go to jail for a little while, we want to deter him from doing what he did and coming back. And we want to deter other people by saying, see, this is what happens. When you do these bad things, we're going to lock you up.
Right.
We want to rehabilitate, which, there's some debate on how much that's really a purpose of the punishment.
Right. It seems like nowadays, too, that rehabilitation's fallen to the wayside. You know what I mean? You don't really see...
It has. But,
right.
There's still some debate on, how much of that is a purpose of the punishment. And the last one is retribution, which is... you have done something bad, so we're going to do something to you.
Right, get even.
You did something bad.
Right.
And...
Try to get even.
They've got to get even.
Right.
And when you look at the purposes of punishment, and you're looking at the death penalty, and you're looking at these people who are clearly insane, how much are you really deterring this person? Because they don't have the same mental capabilities of making these choices. You definitely want to incapacitate them. You want to take them away from society because you don't want to hurt other people. But at the same time, the punishment has to be appropriate to what they've done and their level of culpability, how much they were able to understand what they did in the first place.
But I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
And you can achieve all of that with a life in prison or a really long sentence. Right.
Basically, warehousing people is all they're doing. You know what I mean? Building people warehouses. And I just looked up while we were talking. Look, there was a Finnish professor, Jari. Oh man, is that two eyes? Man, you know how Finnish get wild with the vowels. Jari Tihonen with two eyes there. That's wild. Tihonen, and they said that he analyzed the genes of 895 Finnish criminals, and they concluded that the majority of violent criminals carry two genes known as MAOA and CDH13. Now it makes you want to have some kind of genetic test done to see if I got those genes. Well, I'm not a violent guy. I guess at my age, I would have struck out and choked somebody by now, right? So obviously, I don't have them. You know what I mean by now. And that's something else I don't get is that we were talking about the mental health system. Is that man, once you go to prison, the recidivism rate is insane in every state. I'm thinking it's over 85%. It seems like every state. You know what I mean, or higher. And I guess I could Google that, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to go by my instincts. I can say with, confidence, 80% in every state, you would think, or higher. And there's something to that, man, because obviously they're not getting rehabilitated and they're not getting deterred, you know what I mean, or they wouldn't be showing back up. And the fact that once you go to prison, it's like having a scarlet letter, you know what I mean? Now you're marked. You can't vote. People don't want to hire you. You know what I mean? And I know there's been drives in certain states. I don't know if Louisiana done it. I'm sure they probably have it because Arkansas, we're so backwards, we're not going to do it. That, where they were striking from applications where you could ask if someone was a felon. And I thought that was proper because people are always going to recede, and, the recidivism rate's always going to be high if you don't have no other alternative. You know what I mean? Everybody needs options. And if you don't have an option when you get out of jail, you got to go work some job that you can't make ends meet. And you can never advance or never get a better job, especially if you're black or Latino. You're done for. White folks seem to get away with it a little bit more. And, systemic racism is a big part of it, too, and institutionalized racism. But, man, you're just marked, you know what I mean, for life. You're just screwed. And I don't think it should be like that, you know what I mean? I could understand if you were a child molester or you done something that really nefarious and evil. But I'm sure, I assume you feel the same way. I don't know. Tell me. What do you think? Am I right? Shouldn't they take that out of an application? What do you think? I don't know.
Oh, I agree. And, we've got a Secretary of Corrections here in Louisiana, Jimmy LeBlanc, and he is a really, really, really decent guy. He came up through the correctional system. He understands the challenges facing a lot of these inmates. Politically, I think his hands are tied sometimes. I think financially he doesn't have the funding to do the things that he would like to do.
I'm sure.
But he was instrumental in instituting a program. What they figured out when they started looking at these recidivism rates is that these guys that were getting out, a lot of them had significant mental health issues. So when they get into prison, they don't forcibly medicate them unless there's a reason to.
Right.
But if the person, is requiring it, or if they ask for it, then they have a little bit more availability in prison than they do on the street, which is, sad in and of itself. So they would get these guys on the right medications. They would start doing really well.
Right.
They would end up being released, and then they wouldn't have access to their mental health medications
on the outside,
and then they're recidiving pretty quickly. So what Secretary LeBlanc did, or he was instrumental in supporting, was this system where they were taking men that were about to be released, and they were going ahead and they were setting up things like their mental health
right, some type of support
doctors.
Right.
Because it was taking 6 weeks to get into a doctor out on the street if you were trying to do it by yourself. 6 weeks goes by, you're off your meds.
Wow.
You know, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
So what they would do is they would set up the appointments for these guys so that they could go directly from, you know, having their medication in prison to being on the outside and having their medication.
Right.
They saw some of the recidivism drop.
And that's got to be cheaper, you know what I mean, than incarcerating people and putting them through the justice system. Just giving them a few pills, right? It's got to be miles. See, that's what I don't get. Well, that just goes to show you how, man, which, you know, we could talk forever on the corruption of government, but that just goes to show you how, even though people tend to be conservatives who are always law and order, you know, Donald Trump claims to be law and order, and then why he's steady breaking laws, which I think is hilarious. But, you know, all these Republicans, since Nixon started it all. Now every Republican's got to be in law and order, and most moderate liberal Democrats have to be, like Bill Clinton, have to pretend to be law and order too to get elected. And they get in there, and they would rather incarcerate people instead of being proactive and doing it. And, you know, they always claim they want to save money too, which they never do, the conservatives. But they can, you know, they can save tons of money just by giving people mental health support. And instead, you know what I mean, they gotta feed the beast that's bankrolling them, the lobbyists from the prisons and the prison systems and the prison guard, the unions and all the lobbyists they deal with, because they want to keep these, you know, they want to keep the industrialization of imprisoning people going. Because people don't realize it's like I could look up the numbers, but it's in the tens of billions a year. And most people don't realize, like I said yesterday, mainstream companies like AT&T and Verizon are making money off this. And they're ripping the government a new one doing it. You know what I mean? I just saw somewhere where AT&T was charging like $2 a minute for a phone call. That is insane. How, you know what I mean? How's that even legal? You know what I mean? In the real world, AT&T, and plus they got some type of monopoly on it. In the real world, you know what I mean, they would be slapped with so many lawsuits, and probably regulators would be up their ass so hard. But in the prison world, they can get away with $2 a minute. You know what I mean? Which is insane to me. And like you were talking about, no rehabilitation. If you keep them busy, like you were saying yesterday, learning a trade, something they can do when they get out. You know what I mean? Because they're going to get out someday. And that's something else we don't seem to do. We don't seem to plan for. So one day these guys are going to get out. You know what I mean? We can make them better, or we can just send them to a criminal college and let them become meaner, harder criminals when they get released. You know what I mean? It just seems so simple.
Well, and that's what's so crazy about Angola having all these programs. And I think they should have these programs. I'm not advocating they cut them.
Right.
But the majority of the guys that are in Angola are going to die there. There's a whole cemetery because people
I've seen that. That's insane.
Families.
Right, yeah, I've seen the cemetery.
You know, yeah, and so the majority of these guys are coming out, and we've got all these great programs. Meanwhile, for the lower offenses, they're getting sent to the private prisons where they're trying to house them just as cheaply as they can, and giving them no education, no mental health, no skills to use on the outside, and then we send them home.
Right, it's like Lord of the Flies.
Where they've been fighting with each other for, let's say a 3-year sentence.
Right.
And then we're, completely surprised when they recidivate.
Right. It's like Lord of the Flies. You know what I mean? It's like Lord of the Flies in these private prisons. Anything goes, you know what I mean? And all we're doing is making harder, colder, more vicious, more psychologically impaired, making them more sociopathic, and just turning them loose. And then we wonder why they've escalated their violence and their crimes. You know what I'm saying? But it's silly. It's self-defeating, and it makes no sense, and it's ludicrous. Because I'm sure I don't know who. I remember y'all's governor now. I think used to be the lieutenant governor or the attorney general. Am I right?
No. You've got
after Bobby Jindal, huh?
Edwards.
What's that? I'm sorry.
We have John Bell Edwards. He's I think the
Jesus
only
Christ.
Democrat.
Oh, he's a Democrat? Y'all elected a Democrat?
The only Democrat in the Deep South.
What? Y'all elected a Democrat for governor? Jesus Christ.
We did, because
Holy
he was
shit.
running against David Bitter.
Oh, yeah, David Bitter run for governor, Mr. Prostitute guy?
Yep.
Hey, I will give David Bitter props. Hey, I will, and this is what I don't understand. Look, I watch a shitload of documentaries. I'm talking about tons and tons. That's how I know about Angola, because I seen a documentary. Was it Life in Angola or something like that? Life at Camp in Angola. Anyway, I've also seen that documentary, and it's called, it's about Anthony, it's about, Anthony Spitzer. It's about Spitzer in New York. You know, he got caught up in a prostitute scandal, and these billionaires, you know, he'd been on Wall Street for years, shutting all these billionaires, crooked billionaires down. Well, they found out he was seeing a prostitute. They plotted together to get him, you know, to ruin him. And Roger Stone, that asshole who's Donald Trump's buddy, you know what I'm talking about? The spin master, that sleazeball, the spin master with his tattoo of Richard Nixon, that nut job. Anyway, so, you know, they lambasted and they just ruined. And Anthony Spitzer, I think could have been a president. That dude he stood up for the people. But he liked prostitutes, which I don't hold that against him. If his wife didn't mind or they worked it out, that's between them, you know what I mean? But he resigned. David Vitter refused to resign. The balls on that guy, you know what I mean? He said, yeah, I got caught by a prostitute. My wife standing right next to me. I refused to resign, and that dude stayed in the U.S. Senate, and then he had the balls. That dude's got some balls on him. He ran for governor. I guess I wouldn't have worried about it.
He ran for governor and was defeated by a Democrat in Louisiana.
And always, right, thank God somebody that morally corrupt ran so a Democrat would have a chance. You know what I mean? That's about the only way we can get Democrats elected in the South, or get them elected as president of the United States if they're running against total nut jobs. Like, I'm pretty convinced the next president will definitely be a Democrat now, because Trump is stinking up so bad. You know what I mean?
Well, I would have thought that before the 2016 election, but I was clearly wrong.
Oh, I was clearly wrong too, man. I was so shocked. Look here, I'm not a big Hillary fan, but I thought she'd win so big that I got lazy. I'm like, all right, I won't go vote. And I didn't go vote because I just had back surgery, and I was using a walker. It had been a real ordeal just for me to vote. You know what I mean? I should have got an absentee ballot, but I didn't. You know what I mean? And like I said, now I regret, even though it would have made no difference. Plus, I live in Arkansas, so I knew it would make no difference if I voted for Hillary. Because there's no way Arkansas, what you would think Arkansas would be, they jumped on board for Bill. For some reason, they vilified Hillary to an extent. They've been doing it for 10 years, but it's amazing what people think she's capable of. They think she's some type of godmother who's whacking people and putting hits out. You know, how insane is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're killing people connected with the Clinton Foundation. You're like, what? How do you people, man, it just blows my mind the divide between progressives like me, and I take it you're fairly liberal progressive, am I right?
Yes.
Right, I assume, because I know we met in a liberal group, I believe. I think it's a secret, so I won't say any names. But it's just amazing to me, the disconnect between the right and the left. The people on the right have totally bought fake news, bullshit, social media rumors, and Breitbart, and just total horseshit, Alex Jones horseshit. And they believe the most insane stuff and shut down and think everybody else is crazy. They're right. Everybody else is wrong. There's no in-between. There's no middle road. Donald Trump's the Messiah. Hillary Clinton is Satan. Her and Bill Clinton kill people at will. You know what I mean? It's amazing that people think that. You know what I'm saying? It just blows my mind. And they believe it in their heart. You know what I mean? They're not just saying it. They truly believe that shit. And then they wonder why people on the left call them crazy. You know what I mean? Trust me, if Hillary Clinton was whacking people, especially this list, have you seen the list of the people allegedly they've whacked? It's up to 200 people, I think, now. Which is
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, you know, when Bill Clinton was in office, they passed this list around called FOB, Friends of Bill, and he allegedly had all these people killed. At one time, his list was like around 70. Well, they combined it with Hillary and I guess a few miscellaneous murders, and now it's up to like 200. They've combined the list, and I've seen them passing around, and it is totally insane to think there is nobody on this planet that can whack 200 people and not eventually get found out. You know what I mean? That is impossible. But they believe it, man. Huh?
Yeah. No, I have family members that, you
right. They'll awful at Thanksgiving.
We just can't talk about this.
Right. They'll awful at Thanksgiving. No drunk uncle. And you're like, man, I was at the family reunion last week, and man, I met this cousin for the first time. Cool cat. We was getting along, man. I really don't drink, but I even had a couple of beers with him, man. Cool cat. Then out of nowhere, he tells me that Nancy Pelosi's kids were just arrested for importing 200 pounds of cocaine. And I'm like, are you fucking, excuse my language, I was like, are you freaking kidding me, dude? I was like, man, you were cool. You were cool to this point. Now I realize that you're gullible, possibly crazy, and will believe any horse shit that anybody tells you. You know what I mean? And then, of course, I went and Googled it, and, of course, it was on Snopes and everywhere else was totally false. I Googled it just to give the benefit of the doubt. I should have known better. You know what I mean? Because if Nancy Pelosi's kids got caught with 200 pounds of cocaine, the liberal mainstream media wouldn't sweep that under the rug. That would be a huge story on any channel. Fox News would shit themselves. You know what I mean? Can you imagine?
Right.
Fox News, they make fun of CNN for running wall-to-wall coverage of Trump. You imagine if Pelosi's kids got caught with a boatload of cocaine? And every show, Tucker Carlson would probably climax on himself. It would be insane on Fox News. And this dude believed it and said it like it wasn't nothing nonchalant. Yeah, man, Nancy Pelosi's, her daughter got caught 200 pounds of cocaine, buddy. And I was like, man, you've lost your freaking mind. And after that, I walked away from that dude. And I left the reunion. I did. I left the reunion, man, 10 minutes after that. I was like, man, because I knew when you got to, when you've been to your reunions, you've been around your family, you know when one of them starts that shit, it's going to snowball, somebody else is going to pipe up and say, yeah, and say another conspiracy theory. Then before you know it, half your family's discussing all these fake conspiracy theories against the left. You know what I mean? That's how it goes at my family reunions. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the good thing at mine is they all know what I do for a living.
Right.
And so that kind of keyed them in to where I stood on the spectrum. And they'll toe up to it sometimes. They'll go, man, how can you work with those people? You know, kind of thing. But
and they're good Christians too, though, right? That's what gets me. It's always the good Christians that want to stick it to somebody. You know what I mean? They care about you before you're born, but after you're born, up yours, good luck to you, buddy. You know what I mean? They can give a shit less. But before you're born, you're a fetus, and you can't function outside the womb on your own. They will blow up doctor clinics to stop that shit. But once you're born, fuck you, buddy. Good luck. You know what I'm saying? Excuse my language, but I dropped the F-bomb. But yeah, blows my mind. Good Christians.
That's part of my job that's so difficult is trying to find a way to humanize my client to people who are predisposed to think that way.
Right, I bet you, man. That is now that I think about it from that perspective, that's a pretty tough gig you got there, Maggie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is a pretty tough gig. Shit. You do some real work.
Yeah, I mean, I love what I do. It gets me up in the morning, and every night I can go to bed and say, I did some good in the world today.
Right, man, right on. We need more. The world needs more Maggies. Right on. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that, man.
It's hard work because
I bet. I didn't think of it like that. Because you know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, they've already they're predispositioned to already have a position, not trying to freestyle rhyme. But you know what I'm saying? They've already made their minds up.
I'm not trying to sway them. I'm trying to move them.
Right.
And that's a whole different ballgame.
Man, that's like moving mountains. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because I know they come in, and most of the jury that's going to come in, they're going to probably be of a different race than my client.
Right. It's funny how that works out.
A very different life experience.
Jury of your peers. Weird.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
And trying to get them to see, at one time, my client was a little boy, and at one time, my client had, some ideas of what his life was going to be like, and what he wanted to do when he grew up, and again, none of that is to say that he shouldn't be punished for doing this terrible thing,
right?
Because again, by the time they get to that part of it, the jury has decided he did it. So, I'm not saying factual guilt or innocence. I'm saying legal guilt at that point. So if the jury's decided my guy did it, then now I got to give them a reason why my guy is not one of the worst of the worst. And I have been very lucky in that I have never worked with the worst of the worst. Right. Maybe that person is out there. I have never met him.
Unfortunately, I'm sure he is, but you know what I mean? Because people can be some real POSs, and but that
they can. But I'm telling you, I've never worked on a case.
Right. It's just fascinating. You know what I mean?
Significant mental health issues. There wasn't significant abuse issues, and
that's what fascinates me.
This is something that. I hear a lot of people talk about the abuse excuse and maybe I was abused. I didn't grow up and do that. what we found is that the abuse in and of itself is not what, quote, makes you grow up and make a bad decision one night when somebody loses their life. The difference is that somebody like you or me, somebody who's been abused, that didn't grow up to do this thing, we had somebody in our life that was there for us.
Right.
Whether it was a parent, a
some type of support,
a teacher, a coach, somebody that was on our side. And my clients
had nobody.
Didn't have anybody.
Nobody. I know that's what fascinates me is, because like I said, I told you yesterday when we were off the air that, man, I've always been big on criminology and the criminal mind. And, it makes you wonder, because everybody was a lovable, just about everybody. It's rare that you have the Damien Omian evil kid. Most everybody was a lovable kid at some point, just like everybody else. And somewhere along the line, they had a break or something happened that made them go that way, that made them turn that way. You know what I mean? And you wonder, and I do, when I see people like that, I wonder what happened to them, where it happened, what happened to them. Because most people are, like you said, have humanity to them. You know what I mean? They have a heart, they have feelings. Even the hardest dude has emotions and feelings, even though he's had them. And at some point, they broke mentally most of the time because of the stress of their environment. And they went into, I don't want to say animal mode, but they went to survival mode, and they done things that they wish they could take back, I'm sure, most of them. You know what I mean? And it just blows my mind.
Well, kids are a blank slate.
Right.
So kids they're not born racist. They're not born, with just this, like, evil, I don't really believe in evil. Like, I think that people are a product of their environment.
I do too.
And, things happen. But these kids are blank slates. So when they come up in an environment where, let's say, they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, then it creates an insecurity that makes them believe that it's okay to do certain things for survival.
Right, that's what I was talking about, no options. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That lesson gets imprinted, and then it's very hard to change that. So if you're growing up in this environment where, let's say, like the guy I went to school with, who watched his dad, abuse his mother,
shocking.
He grew up believing that was how a married couple reacted to things. He grew up, with the idea that that's how people treat each other.
Right. It's okay to punch your old lady.
Right. You can make a law that says that it's not okay to beat your wife, but that's not going to supersede what he learned growing up.
Right.
And so there's got to be a bigger, better intervention before it gets to the point that it got with him. Right.
You were talking about beating your wife. It's, I get off on tangents because I suffer from ADHD, but I used to get in weird laws. I used to love reading up on weird old laws. I'm sure Louisiana has some wild ones, but Arkansas had one at one time that said it was okay to beat your wife with a stick as long as it wasn't wider than 2 fingers. And that was like back in the late 1800s. You could just go to whooping her up, man. How insane is that? It just blows my mind that people thought that was okay to slap a woman around. I was raised by a woman. I was raised by women, a house full of them. I didn't have a father. I was raised by 3 women: my grandma, my aunt, my mother, and my other aunt. So 4 women. But and they were strong. And I said them do some superwoman crap to make ends meet, and you know what I mean, and work hard. And the fact that it was okay sometimes just to punch and slap a woman, it blows my mind that people could think like that. You know what I mean? And today, there's a lot of people. And I have several friends, man, and I stopped being friends with them just for the fact they become woman beaters. And there's people today that think it's okay that if a woman hits you or puts you in a certain position, it's okay to give her a smack or a slap or choke her or throw her down. It's insane that people still think that way, and they do. And it blows my mind. And like you said, domestic violence, I believe, is one of the biggest driving forces of what sends people to a penitentiary eventually. You know what I mean? Because it seems like a lot of those guys come from childhoods where it was a single parent home, and it seems like mom had a bunch of boyfriends and they were all violent, or a dad that was violent. You know what I mean? And as a kid, seeing that over and over, man, that has to give you some form of PTSD or warp your mind. You know what I mean? And it definitely hardens your heart to the world and to women. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, it makes you feel like it's okay, like it's being condoned. If dad smacks mama around, it's okay if I smack my wife around. You know what I mean?
There was
blows my mind,
training material I was reading just the other day about how to interview clients and, different ways to try to get information. Because what I'm going in to do, I'm virtually a stranger. They don't know me from, Adam's house cat.
I'm sure it's hard to get it out of them. Right.
Try to get them to tell me the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Right.
So that we can then turn around and use it in a public forum and try to get some mercy.
Damn, your job gets harder and harder.
Stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So anyway, I was reading this training material about it, and one of the things it was saying was, somebody who does this work going in to talk to somebody, and the person starts revealing like all this, horrific incest going on in the house,
and
didn't know that it was not normal because it was his normal.
Right. It's whatever your normal is. And that's what, man, the more you describe your job, the harder it seems to be. Holy shit, Maggie, you do some hard work, man. I didn't even think about going there and you're trying to get the most intimate and private secrets from somebody, and you're a stranger, and you got to try to pry that out of them, and then turn around and, like you said, use it in an open forum. Holy crap, you got a hard job, man. Jesus Christ. I'm sure you're underpaid too, but Jesus Christ. That's a lot to ask of a person. So I bet you'd probably be pretty good at poker. You ever tried playing poker? You'd probably be pretty awesome at it. You know what I mean? Because you can read people.
Because I wear all my feelings on my sleeve, and
I do
think
too.
it's why my clients do trust me is because I do go in there, and I cry with them, and I
do too.
Laugh with them,
I'm a softy.
And,
I'm a bleeding heart liberal.
Give to get, and,
right.
So I share a little bit about myself, and I try to always be upfront, try to always be honest, and and I'm always working to the greater good. It's not that I'm nosy; it's that this all serves a purpose.
Right, you're trying to help them help themselves. But I'm just saying, it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind that your job's that hard, man. And you're doing good work, but man, that's a hard road to hoe, as my grandma used to say. That's a hard road to hoe, but man, I couldn't imagine doing that. But you probably can read people at this point on another level. You know what I mean? You're probably awesome at reading people, I'm thinking. You know what I mean?
I can't imagine doing anything else.
But like you said, I'm a bleeding heart liberal too. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I guess I always say it's because I was raised by women. Who knows why? But that's just how I am. But because I don't want to sound like women are all emotionally fragile or anything. Because I know some hard chicks. But it just blows my mind that you would get. Well, it's just the whole fact that you got to go in there in the most horrible situation and try to make it a little better. You know what I mean? Wow.
Yeah.
As best as you can. Man, that is a tough gig, Maggie. I will admit, man, I'm impressed. Which I was impressed beforehand because it sounded interesting. The more I've heard you talk about it, the more impressive it is. Man, and the fact that you still manage to be happy, you don't carry that burden with you, you know what I mean? I'm sure it's hard not to carry that with you when you leave out of that room, you know what I mean?
My first case was a real bad one. Again, I won't get into any details of it, but I will say that I probably cried every day for 3 months leading up to the trial.
Wow.
It was
I'm not glad to.
Emotionally difficult thing I've ever done in my life.
I bet.
It was, at the end of the day, I was able to go to bed saying, I did my best to try to save his life.
Right, and you did. And I hate to interrupt you, but look, we're at 44 minutes here, Maggie. And, man, this has been awesome.
I told you I could talk about this forever.
I know, but look, that's fine, because I can listen and talk about it forever, too. But look, would you come back on sometime? Is that cool?
Absolutely. I had a really good time with it.
Oh, I have, too, man. This has been awesome. And, like I said, man, you have blown my mind. That whole murder, family murder deal blew my wig off. Everybody's murdering their old lady. That blew my wig off. But, I definitely would like for you to come back sometime. I would definitely love for you to come back sometime, man. That would be cool. But I'm going to get off here. This is Byron Lloyd. This is Mrs. Maggie Webster. It's Shooting the Breeze with your man, Byron Lloyd. And dig it, man. I'll get back with you. Peace.